Hey there, Blue Devil fans. Welcome to the latest edition of DBR Bites. We probably won't go a long time on this one because, in the interest of full transparency, we are recording this moments after we recorded the recap of the Clemson game. We didn't want you to have an hour and a half podcast in your feed, so we break it up into an hour here, 30 minutes there. You know, that's how it works. This is Jason Evans with you. I am in Durham, sitting in a hotel room very close to the Duke campus. I'm joined by my buddy Donald Wine. Donald, how you been in the past 30 seconds since we wrapped up the last podcast?
I told everybody at the end of the last episode that we were going to catch our breath, and I did that. So here we are.
We are here to preview the game against the Syracuse Orange, a team that, and I'll get to this a little later, a team that I think they're the anti-Clemson, Donald. So Clemson is a team where the sum of the parts is bigger than the individuals. Syracuse is a team where the individuals look really, really good, but the sum of the parts hasn't really resulted in a lot of big wins for them. Tell us about the season so far for the Orange.
It's been not great if you're a Syracuse fan. 15-11 on the season, 6-7 in the ACC. They're tied for ninth in the conference. They do have some decent top 100 wins. Tennessee, of course, Jason, we saw them in the preseason. They beat Florida State, Notre Dame. They beat Cal in 2 OTs, and they beat Stanford. So those two games as well. But they have a couple of bad losses. They lost to Hofstra. Again, not a terrible loss in Hofstra. They're 103rd in KenPom. Losing to Boston College in overtime is probably the one that will haunt them. 151st in KenPom is Boston College. They do have other pretty good losses against some really tough teams. Houston, Kansas, Iowa State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State, UNC, and UVA. So they've lost to everybody in the top half of the ACC and the top third of the Big 12. That's basically how they've gotten to 15-11 at this point. They are on a 2-game winning streak after losing 6 of 7. And when you look at the numbers here, Jason, they're 69th in KenPom, 69th in the net. This is still barely a quad 2 game since this is at home. And Evan Mia has them at 65. Bart Torvik is the one that has them rated the highest at 61st. So as you go into the metrics, it's interesting to kind of note how this team has had their struggles on both offense and defense, but also their biggest struggle is if you foul them, it's almost guaranteed that they're not going to get any points of the ordeal because they're one of the worst teams in Division I at shooting free throws.
Yeah, we'll get into that. You know, I wanted to, you mentioned some of their losses. They lost to Houston in overtime. It was a game they absolutely could have won against a really, really good Houston team. And literally the next day,
probably should have won that game. They were ahead late.
Yeah. The game they lost to Kansas just a couple days later was a 50-50, you know, very, very close game with 5 minutes to go. Kansas went on a run to you know, go ahead and wrap that one up and win by 9. But it was a very, very tight contest in the final minutes. So this is a Syracuse team that has shown it can play with anybody. I mean, like they only lost to Clemson by 3. Yeah, a lot of their losses have been very, very competitive. And as you mentioned, 2-game winning streak. They beat 2 of the ACC bubble teams. They beat California and SMU this week. Now, both those games were at home, but still, those are both really, really nice wins for Syracuse. The SMU game, they literally won, you know, functionally on a buzzer beater. Syracuse is not a team that you should take lightly because they're capable, clearly, of playing with anybody. You mentioned that they're, you know, in like the 60s, 70s in most of the advanced metrics. Pomeroy projects that this is a game that Duke wins by 19 points, 81-62. Bart Torvik says Duke wins by 18 points, 81-63. You know, I don't know if the margin is going to be quite that large because I think Syracuse is very capable. Unlike Duke's recent opponents, Clemson and Pittsburgh, Syracuse is not going to play really slow. Like that's just not their MO. I doubt we see nearly as many of those, you know, shots coming at the very end of the shot clock the way we have in the past couple of games. On offense for Clemson, the first thing that jumps out is that this is a poor shooting team. They hit just 33% of their threes, which isn't terrible, but it's not great. But they are, like you said, really awful at the free throw line. They're hitting less than 64% of their free throws. They're one of the 5 poorest free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball. They don't take a lot of threes. They are mostly a sort of one-on-one creation kind of a team, not a big passing team. They have one of the bottom 70 assist rates in college basketball. And, even though they have guys who are very, very capable of getting in the lane and attacking the basket, they still take too many mid-range jumpers for my taste. I hate the mid-range jumper unless you're really wide open, and Clemson's willing to take those shots. On defense, there are two things that are really significant to note about them, in terms of the metrics and the way they play. First of all, this will be one of the rare games where Duke sees a good bit of zone. Now, they are not like they were in the Jimmy Boeheim days, where they were playing zone 100% of the time. But this is a Syracuse team that'll bust out a 2-3 zone with some degree of regularity. They try and use it to slow you down a little bit, to force you to play against something different than you usually see. There are not a lot of teams playing zone nowadays. So when they bust out that zone, it causes the opposition to sort of, recalibrate exactly what they're running and how it all works. They try and keep you off balance, make you uncomfortable. They'll also throw a press at you at times. I fully expect them at some point to try and, get Duke uncomfortable by pressing us, get Duke uncomfortable by throwing zone at us, and then suddenly switching back to man-to-man. And they're capable of doing all 3 of those different things. They're also, the biggest thing that you'll notice in their metrics, they are an elite shot blocking team. They have the 5th best block percentage in Division I. They block 16% of 2-point field goals. That's a huge, huge number. But, Donald, there's a trade-off when you go for that many blocks. This Syracuse is a terrible defensive rebounding team. When you go for the block, it means you're often out of position for the rebound. Syracuse is 300th in the country at defensive rebounding position. They allow offensive rebounds on a third of missed shots against a Duke team that's one of the top 25 offensive rebounding teams in college basketball. Watch for those second chance points. That could be a huge key to Duke having a big game against them.
It's interesting, the fact that they go for blocks and aren't there to clean up the glass is kind of indicative of how they play an offense. You mentioned them being kind of individuals that on paper you go, oh yeah, I know these guys. We've seen these guys quite a bit. But it's interesting that on defense, that's kind of how that works as well. Individuals can go for blocks, but then collectively as a team, nobody's there to kind of fill that gap behind them to clear out space for defensive rebounding. It's almost like a punishment that you go for the block. If you don't get it, the other team more than often than not gets another chance to make a basket and again have you out of position, get you in foul trouble, that sort of thing. So as you go to the players, I know we'll take a quick break, but when you go to the players, it'll be interesting because you're going to hear players, ladies and gentlemen, that are going to be like, "Oh wow, I've definitely heard that name before. This is the son of a player that we know very well." A lot of these guys that haven't really moved around, and if they have moved around, they've moved around from teams that we've seen also. So you'll see some of these players and then go, "How is this team 15-11?" It's because they have not figured out how to play as a team yet, and Autry has just not figured out how to get these guys moving as a cohesive unit just yet.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get to the players in just a moment. Take a quick break. We'll have more on the game against the Syracuse Orange in just a moment.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Support for this show and the Fans First Sports Network comes from Strong Coffee Company. Elevate your coffee routine with Strong Coffee Company's Black Instant Blend and Lattes. Both feature organic coffee, protein, MCTs, and adaptogens for sustained energy and mental clarity. With quick delivery and exceptional taste, their coffee is a convenient option and a nutritious addition to your daily routine. Experience a healthier, most productive day with Strong Coffee Company. Visit strongcoffeecompany.com and receive 20% off at checkout using promo code FFSN. Again, strongcoffeecompany.com, FFSN.
Back from the break as Donald and Jason are previewing the game Monday night against the Syracuse Orange, a game that I will be at. And Donald, as I name the guys in this team, you're going to be like, wait, why isn't this a better team? There's some really good individual players.
Just mentioned some of these players. Yeah,
exactly. So I think it really starts. The preview has to start with Donnie Freeman, power forward, 6'9", really impressive athlete. He's their leading scorer at 17.6 points per game, gets better than 7 rebounds per game. He's a good rim protector. He's not, I mentioned that they are a great shot blocking team. He's not the primary shot blocker, but he's a good rim protector, blocks more than 1 shot per game. Donnie Freeman has struggled with injuries. They held him back. He missed like 2/3 of his freshman season, and he missed several weeks, more than a month, I think it was, earlier this year. I'm convinced that Donnie Freeman will someday be playing in the NBA. He is just too impressive of a physical specimen, and he's very skilled as well. He has a very long stride, which allows him to attack the basket in an explosive way. He's good at drawing fouls. That is something to keep an eye on this game. If you're trying to come up with a scenario where Duke has trouble against Syracuse, there's no question that part of that is Donnie Freeman perhaps getting a Patrick Gongba or a Cameron Boozer into some foul trouble, and it would not be crazy for that to happen. He has a nice mid-range game. His pull-up is really solid. He takes, he'll take a few threes per game, but he's not like a great outside shooter. I think it's a very, very intriguing matchup with Cameron Boozer. I would say that Donnie Freeman has a really good argument to be the 3rd best power forward in the ACC, which is third best. But when you have Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson in the conference, who are both probably All-Americans, there's no shame in being the 3rd best power forward. He's just a really good player. One thing to watch about Freeman is sometimes he tries to force things a little bit too much, especially he tries to make like spectacular passes that probably aren't there. So he'll turn the ball over sometimes at inopportune moments. Their second leading scorer is J.J. Starling. Duke fans, you should remember that name. We've been talking about J.J. Starling for a long, long time on this podcast. Yep. Duke once recruited J.J. Starling. He ended up going to Notre Dame. He then moved on to Syracuse. He's now a senior. He's in his 3rd year at Syracuse after spending a year at Notre Dame. J.J. Starling's going to finish his career with well over 1,500 points scored in an ACC uniform. That's pretty darn impressive. His usage rate, by the way, is down a little bit as a senior, but that's partially because he's taking better shots this year and he's being more efficient. He was a kind of a wild mid-range creator, like just everything was off the dribble, contested, like not good shots, to be honest. Earlier in his career, but he's gotten a lot better about that, and he's not committing as many foolish turnovers either. Syracuse has a new point guard as well, another name that you'll recognize. Their point guard is Nathan George, who came over from after a couple of years at Georgia Tech. He's one of the best assist guys in the ACC, 5.6 assists per game. Not a great outside shooter as Nathan George, but he's a very creative player. He has a solid frame. He can get to where he wants to be on the floor. He has a really good eye for angles. Syracuse offense, to some extent, is put the ball in George's hands and, let him figure out where the angles are to attack the opposing defense. And he's absolutely capable. This guy's had multiple double-digit assist games in his career, and since he's gotten to Syracuse, he does have to look out a little bit for turnovers. As creative as he is, he sometimes will make a bad turnover for them. So that's one of the things about Nathan George. I have to mention, Donald, a very, very high-profile freshman. Kiyan Anthony is Carmelo Anthony's son. Kiyan's role at Syracuse, let's just say it's been chaotic. That's the best word I could come up for. Yesterday against SMU, he had 13 points. He took 10 shots, played a key role in that victory for them. Just a few days earlier on Wednesday, they played Cal. double overtime game, he only played 14 minutes. He took one shot from the field. That's been the story on him also. It's like, oh, Kyan Anthony's like not there. Oh, wait, Kyan Anthony's playing a big role. Like up, down, up, down. Look, when he's in attack mode and he's getting downhill and attacking the basket, he's really effective. But sometimes he falls into this thing where either he's not bothering to play hard or he's just taking outside. He's not a good three-point shooter. I can't figure him out. He's a highly touted recruit. Obviously, his dad is amazing. But he's just my bet is he's going to want to put on a show in Cameron. You know that's what he's going to want. So we'll see if he can do it.
You also you failed to mention the game that happened before the Cal game, which was the UVA game, where he inexplicably did not play at all.
Yeah.
And there was a big hubbub about him not playing at all. And Adrian Archie was asked about it, and he was like, "Hey, look, it just didn't get him in the game." But you could tell that there's something going on there. It's kind of weird. They're not really talking about much about what Kyan Anthony is doing or what he's not doing to warrant such erratic playing time. You mentioned the 24 minutes he had against SMU. Before that UVA game where he didn't play, he had 15 minutes against against North Carolina, and against Notre Dame he only had 9 minutes. So it's weird. And as you mentioned, when he does come in, he's one of the higher usage players that they have. A lot of times he comes in to try and get hot quickly. But for a guy who was touted to be not necessarily the next coming of Carmelo Anthony, but supposed to be a very, very good player in the ACC, one of the highly touted freshmen in the ACC, he just hasn't had the year that his counterparts have.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There are three other guys I want to mention about the Syracuse team. I'm very quick on them because each of these guys have kind of a singular impact on the game. I mentioned that Syracuse is a great shot blocking team. That mostly comes from 6'9" senior William Kyle. He averages a crazy 2.7 blocks per game. He's their leading rebounder at 7.7 rebounds per game. But man, for a dude to average almost 3 blocks per game, you got to be on the lookout for that dude patrolling the rim. And then they have two guys who are pretty good outside shooters. Nate Kings hits about 37% from three, takes almost 5 3-pointers per game. And Tyler Betsy shoots more than 4 3-pointers per game and hits just a shade under 40%. Those two guys, make sure that they aren't getting off against you, and you should be in good shape because there are not a lot of other guys on Syracuse who are really capable 3-point shooters, but those two guys are definitely to watch out for.
So, Jason, as we kind of lead into some of the things to watch, I want to start with this. You mentioned, and I've kind of talked about it as well, the fact that you just mentioned some of these players, and you didn't mention Ibrahim Souare, who also came over from Georgia Tech. So again, a guy that's going to come off the bench, not necessarily be highly involved in the game, but especially on defense, another guy that they're going to throw at Duke. But they have all these parts, and they have all these guys that on paper you're like, wow, this team should be among the top in the ACC. Definitely a team that should be at least flirting with being ranked with the number of guys that they have, and they just haven't figured out how to play as a team yet. So I would love for them to figure that out after Monday night. Let's not have them figure that out on the floor in Cameron. Don't let Syracuse play as a team. Keep them playing ISO ball. They're one of the worst teams in the country at assist rate, especially in the ACC. They don't like passing the ball around, and because of that, that makes it where you can kind of limit what some of those guys do, especially when they have the ball. So if Syracuse is going to figure out how to play as a team, let it not be tomorrow night. Offensive rebounding, you mentioned the fact that they're just not great at those. They're great at blocking shots, but if they don't get the block shot, it's very, very capable to get the offensive rebound on them. Let's figure out a way to do that. I think our paint game obviously has been stellar the past couple of weeks. And if we can continue that and dominate the paint against Syracuse, both on offense and defense, I think there's going to be a telltale sign of how this game goes because Syracuse is going to throw a lot at the inside. And if we're able to match that and exceed that, then I think we'll be in good shape. The final thing I have is you mentioned the zone. And it's interesting because the zone is obviously something, the patented 2-3 zone is something that Jimmy Boeheim did for the entirety of his career. If they played man, you had to ask if Jimmy Boeheim was not on the bench because they just played it 1,000% of the time. Now they kind of have it in spurts. Adrian Autry uses it, but it's not his go-to. When they do have that zone, though, boy, am I glad that Malik Brown is on our team because he lived in that and thrived in that like kind of system for 2 years before he came to Duke. And one way that you're going to see us do that, and this doesn't lend well to the shot selection, but it does lend itself well to limiting how effective their inside their rim protection can be. Ball movement through the zone to find a good shot includes Malik Brown or someone like Adame Sarr going to that free throw line. If one of our guys doesn't attack it on the dribble, going to that free throw line and making the 2-3 patented zone kind of collapse in on around the free throw line. And then finding a pass where Malik Brown has been great this season at finding those backdoor cuts from the top of the key or from the free throw line. That's where it's going to be a great way to break this zone and to get some good shots. Whether, again, they're at the rim behind the defense so that they have to foul or they have to just let us walk on by, or finding an open guy on the wing for a three-point shot. And if you're going to have a zone, make them pay for it by hitting those shots. Make it where they have to abandon the zone because you're hitting your outside shots. But that's where I see the things to watch. And if we can, the times that they do present zone, if we're able to break that pretty easily and get some easy points, I don't think they can handle us as well man-to-man throughout the entire game. And the zone is kind of a way for them to kind of reset that. And if they can't have that reset, we're going to have the advantage.
Hey, Donald, I want to mention one other thing. It's afternoon on Sunday as we're recording this. Most folks, aren't going to hear it probably until Monday. My bet today, right now, the 15th of February, we are exactly 1 month out from the reveal of the full NCAA tournament bracket. Mm-hmm. My bet is we are going to hear later today that the NCAA will release their top 16 seeds if the tournament happened today. And there's little question that Duke will be on the 1 seed line. I'll be interested in seeing if they usually identify, where teams fall in the order. I'll be interested in knowing if my bet is Duke will probably be the 3rd overall seed, but it wouldn't be shocking if we were the 2nd overall seed. It really wouldn't, especially based on Arizona losing a couple games this week. But in any event, we're into the home stretch here, buddy.
Yeah, it's funny, Jason, because I'm not trying to look ahead to next weekend, but next weekend was shaping up to be one of those epic all-time non-conference days, or I'm sorry, regular season days, where you have Arizona facing Houston and us facing Michigan. The top 4 teams right now, currently in the country, all facing each other. And part of me was like, okay, they're probably going to come out with these seedings this week at some point before those games happen. Now, of course, Arizona losing changes how those seedings are going to go, or I'm sorry, changes how those rankings are going to go. But it'll be interesting to see what the committee is thinking about with terms of seedings, and not just, as you mentioned, where people get placed, but in what order they get placed. And so it also kind of gives a barometer that, the games next week are going to be a barometer, but we need to take care of business tomorrow night, Monday night against Syracuse, because it doesn't matter what the weekend is shaping up to be. It only matters about tomorrow night, and I know these guys are going to be focused on taking care of the Orange, and then after that, they can start thinking down the road towards the NCAA tournament and other games before that.
And Donald, I did want to mention props to the ACC. Duke, of course, is playing Michigan next week, but just this weekend, we have Virginia playing Ohio State, Louisville playing Baylor. High-profile ACC teams going out in the non-conference against other power conference teams, something we haven't seen a lot of in February in recent years. And here's the ACC doing it, and Virginia won, and Louisville won, and I hope that Duke wins against Michigan later next week. But it was these are important wins as the ACC continues to make a case for 8, 9, whatever it may be, number of teams, and those teams being highly seeded. It matters to Duke that the ACC looks better this year than we have in recent years. It makes all our wins look all the better, and it cements us as a clear number 1 seed. With that said, yeah.
No, I think that sums up brilliantly. Let's take care of business, and then we can talk about 1 seeds. And we'll say as soon as that top 16 comes out, of course we're going to discuss it, but it'll probably be after tomorrow night.
Exactly, after the Syracuse game. All right, until then, that's Donald. I'm Jason in Durham. Here's the Duke band playing us out and taking us to a matchup in Cameron against the Orange.